Hi, Megan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I am so excited for this discussion. I have been telling everyone that wants to listen to me talk about my webinar series for the last 6 months, but the timing of this discussion is perfect because we're entering such a crazy busy season. And, I was writing a blog post for a partner a couple days ago, and I was just like, I think one of the sentences is like, the weather is changing, the seasons are changing, the air is changing, and like despite mother nature's like plea to slow down, I feel like we just speed up around this time of the year, and it's so stressful and so busy.
Yeah.
And to have you here to help us learn the power of no and prioritizing our guesses, I just feel like the time is perfect. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, of course. And I will just like full disclosure and transparency. I'm pretty bad at saying no. So a lot of this is what I aspire to do as well.
I think that's really common, and you're certainly not alone. The advice I give to my friends about like marriage and or just being a parent, I should truly just also take for myself, but
Absolutely.
such is life. Okay, so for those of you that are joining, if you'll just let us know in the questions section where you are dialed in from, we just sort of love to know where everyone is located, and I'll let them sort of, chat among themselves, Megan, but let's get started. So, hi everyone. I am Sarah, the founder of Poppylist, and I'm so grateful that you are here for our 13th webinar. We launched this series back in May just because there's so much information out there and it's hard to decipher sources of truth. And I also feel like a lot of topics just don't get touched. And we obviously named this solicited advice because when you are expecting, the one thing we can all agree on is how much unsolicited advice we get from people. And then that never stops as you become a mom and dad. So that is sort of the name for our webinar series. And again, I'm so thankful to all of you that are here. So let us know where you are dialed in from. Megan, I'm going to launch this poll really quick. Just I love to see where everyone is sort of like in their life stage in case we need to like shift any part of the discussion. And then I will hand it over to you for an intro. But if you guys are on the line, those of you that are on, please go ahead and take the poll that you see on your phone or your desktop and let us know where you are. Okay, so right now, Megan, let's see, 30% are expecting their first, 25% are is a caregiver, so maybe like an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent is on the call, and then the rest is other. So that's amazing.
Yeah,
Congratulations to those of you that are expecting your first.
absolutely. And thank you to all the caregivers. It's not an easy job.
What's that?
And thank you to all the caregivers. That's certainly not an easy job.
I
Whether
know, it's not at all. Megan, just give me 1 second. I just got an email from Diane, and I'm gonna just try to help her get logged in. Okay, just 1 second, guys, sorry. Okay, I just asked Emily to help connect to Diane to log in. Okay, so still about 60% other, 20% caregiver, and the rest are expecting their first baby. Okay, that is amazing. And let me see if, okay, so I'm gonna close this poll so we can just like jump right into our discussion. And then Megan, I'll check my phone in like 5 minutes to see if Diane still has any issue, but I'm gonna close the poll. And okay, so again, Megan, thank you so much for being here. If you will just introduce yourself, tell us about you and why you started Tula and what it is, and then we'll get right into our discussion.
Absolutely. I'm Megan. Thank you guys all for joining. Thanks again, Sarah. So I am a first-time founder, a mom of 2 little girls, 8 and almost 11 next week. Gulp, that goes really fast. And really my why and purpose in co-founding Tula, who my co-founder is my best friend of 20 years, also a mom who was trying to balance caregiving and career and all of the things, and finding that never-ending like hamster wheel situation, which is really what led us to the why and the reason for creating Tula, which was to help people find more time in their days so that we can all prioritize with purpose and not feel like we're like beholden to a to-do list at all times and driven by, others' expectations or trying to do it all at all costs, and kind of that continual burnout cycle. So I was working like 60 hours a week as a single mom and trying to juggle it all, and really found myself in a tough spot, pretty unhappy, pretty burnt out, and pretty ready to figure out another way to do it better. And that's really kind of where the idea of Tula came from, and what Cody and I have now taken and continued to grow, and hopefully can bring that impact and help to as many people in as many communities as we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro. Can you talk about, part of the discussion is like prioritizing our guesses, how to say no, what does that look like in real life, putting that into practice. But one of the things that I've heard you talk about before is this thing called the second shift, which might come up over the next half hour. So can you just like help sort of set the stage and tell us more, like what does that mean?
Sure. So the second shift is really, well, as it's called, the second shift, what we come home to after a long day, of working outside of the home, or even for people who don't work outside of the home. There's just this always kind of ongoing list of maintaining a household, caregiving, whether that's for children, spouses, sick or elderly parents. Like there's just so much in the realm of caregiving that creates a whole nother job. So the reality is that people work probably closer to 2 and 3 jobs just to try to make everything happen in the way that we, hope that it will, or the expectations that we have for ourselves. And while, a lot of those things are necessities, the reality is that we probably add a lot to that list and to that second shift that is something that we're kind of putting on ourselves by comparison to other people, or things that are more in the should category, and that if we didn't do them, there really would be no negative impact. So really just trying to alleviate that second shift and figure out a way to prioritize those things that are on that list, so that we're doing the things that have the most impact and meaning to ourselves, and also looking for a way to shift the mindset and shift the narrative around asking for help and delegating those things that maybe don't serve us as much, but just take a lot of time and energy and resources to check that box. And it feels like it's just it's a shift that continues to grow as far as hours and responsibilities, and that's something that we'd really like to try to kind of put more in a box and shift everyone else's mindsets outside of that box to look for ways to alleviate that stress.
Okay, so one of the things that I know you wanted to ask the audience was, what's a stressor or pain point for you? Like, what is something you want to get off your plate, right? That was one of the questions you wanted to poll everyone.
For sure. So like in that second shift, those are the things like the meal planning, the prep, the answering 800 emails from your kiddo's school, which I don't know. I think everyone's pretty much in that same boat.
Yeah. You guys, they can also put it in the question. So if anyone wants to share with Megan and I the stressor, please.
Laundry, carpools, all the things that just don't even think to put on your list. You're just kind of doing them as a habit, and it takes a lot of time. For me, that is, well, I'm not a really great cook, so it's meal planning and prep, but just the grocery shopping alone, kind of coming up with that list is not my favorite thing to do. So that for me is what I like to hand off if I can.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Okay, Diane is here. Hi, Diane. I can see you now as a panelist. Hi. Oh, wait, I think you're on mute. Hit the little mic and turn it green, and then we'll be able to hear you.
I was going to say I could see and hear you, but I guess I joined as a attendee. I didn't see your link. Oh, I'm sorry. It's always something with me.
It's okay. It's all good. We're so happy you're here. Okay, so quickly introduce yourself, and then I'm going to ask, while you're introducing yourself, can everyone in the questions put in what's a stressor or pain point for you? Like, what's one thing you would love to have off your plate? And then we'll sort of go through them. But Diane, go ahead and introduce yourself. We're so happy you're here.
Yeah, sorry, Megan, to cut you off about the second shift. I think you were just talking about. Yeah, I'm Diane Bowden, and I'm host of the Minimalist Moms podcast. I also have a book with the same name that I released back in 2021. I've been doing this podcast for probably, I think it's been about 6 years now, 4 on my own. And I just talk to moms about, honestly, it's less about minimalism and more about creating a life of intention is what I like to say. And under that category falls simplicity, yes, intentionality, minimalism, just how do we curate a life of meaning and things that we really value. So that's like a big umbrella of the Minimalist Moms podcast.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, I'm a big fan. I've had the honor of being on your podcast twice, so thank you. And I'm so I can return this favor and have you on our webinar. So
I'm excited to be here. Sorry,
okay,
I'm a few.
Oh, seriously, it is fine. Okay, so here are some of the answers we're seeing that people would love to get off their plate. School calendars, activity planning, doctor's appointments, prescriptions, birthday party gifts, all that just being invited to birthday parties in general.
Yes.
I also have here keeping up with my kids' shoe and clothing sizes. I see lots of meals, specifically dinner. I think dinner is so hard because that's just like the craziest couple hours of everyone's day, trying to get bedtime routines and everyone fed. Having to stop working when my kids get sick. Haircuts, school forms. So there's a lot. There's so much. So I don't know, like I can't answer or help people take these things off their plates, but hearing all of those lists, Megan, I'll ask you first, and then Diane, what's something you might tell a parent who's just like so overly overwhelmed with these never-ending lists that feel like a burden?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just start with, and this is, our very much our catchphrase, looking at that list with purpose and what are the things that would absolutely have to get done? What are the things that are shoulds? And are there things that you can kind of push down that list that don't actually have to get done today, tomorrow, this week, and kind of schedule those out into buckets of priority? Because I love a list and I love checking off things on a list, but sometimes just looking at a really long list is overwhelming, right? And you kind of get paralyzed about even starting with one. So if you can kind of bucket them into timeframes that they need to be done, what's really the most important, I think that's a great starting point. Also looking at that list, and are there things that you would be able to delegate to a partner? Are there things that you could trade with a friend as far as like pickup or emails or things that happen at school? Oftentimes our friends as we get older become our kids' friends' parents. And so, you have this unique ability to now have a new community of maybe trading some time and obligations as well. So especially with that school lens, just because the reality of getting kids to school every day is hard enough on its own, let alone the 800 emails of things to not forget every day. So yeah, I think I would look at like priority, whether or not it really needs to be done urgently, kind of scheduling it out and looking for opportunities to share with a partner or a friend.
Diane, anything?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said. And I would also suggest, and I feel like this is true of minimalist and kind of what I'm trying to share with people in general, but I think we have to get comfortable living counterculture, or kind of how we've been programmed to live over the last probably, 30, 40 years. Obviously, I don't even know what was about to come out of my mouth, so pardon me as I keep kind of verbally processing with you guys. But I think back when women entered the workplace, there was this hustle of like, okay, now both of us are working and we don't have time to do all of the things at home, but still that burden still lies on us. And so we're trying to juggle all of these things. So I think that is something that has just fallen on us with the way that our culture has gone. But I kind of want women to know, like, even though we have been living that way, it doesn't mean you have to, and you can start new cycles in your household. And again, I have a couple of side hustle jobs. This is one of them. But I also say no to the birthday parties. I heard someone say birthday parties is something that they don't like to do. You know what? I don't really go to birthday parties with my kids, and people can say that that's mean, but it's like we kind of direct our energies and attentions other places. And I sound like such a Scrooge saying that, but I just think that you get to curate your life. You get to make the decisions. And sure, there are things that you have to do, the doctor's appointments, the cooking dinner every night. But yes, outsourcing, handing tasks off to kids once they get old enough, or partners. But also, are you just saying yes to certain things to keep up with the Joneses, or because everyone else has to, or you want approval? So you follow through with the things you have to do, but you don't have to do everything. That list is shorter than I think it actually needs to be.
Yeah. When we did our webinar prep call, I don't remember which one of you said it. I think it might have been Megan, but you said that, I wrote it down. Let me see. I don't want to forget it. Should do does not make it a priority.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, maybe you should go to the birthday party because maybe it's one of your kids' friends, but that certainly isn't a priority. So one of the things that my husband and I have decided is, like, if we've never heard Amelia talk about this kid and we're invited to the birthday party, we're not going. It doesn't mean that they're not friends, but to me, it just means it's not one of the closest friends that she spends most time with at school. Because in a lot of schools, I think, well, she's only 4, but if you have a birthday party, you have to invite the entire class.
Mm-hmm.
And is that common, like, the older they get, even in elementary school? Your guys'
I don't know
kids
there yet. I will agree with you, Sarah, though. I should clarify to say we do go to some birthday parties. It's just not all the random invites that we're getting from all the students that just happen to be in the preschool class. That's
Yeah.
something that we kind of said no to. So sorry, I should clarify that.
No, you've never been to a birthday party? No, of course I know you do. But yeah, that's kind of like a fun rule. Okay, if we've never heard Amelia mention this kid's name, we're probably not going to prioritize going.
Yeah.
And if the invite says no gifts, please, we are not bringing a gift. I've seen like discussions on social media. It's like, should you bring a gift if the invite says no gifts, please? It's like, well, no, the invite says no gifts. It's okay to show up. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's a huge effort. Okay. So one of the things that I sort of touched on before you were able to join, Diane, was the timing of this discussion is perfect because the holiday season is so crazy and it's so busy. Everyone's calendars, I feel like more gets added to it. So how should families think about, obviously we already talked about like maybe prioritizing certain things, but I would love for one of you to share like putting that into practice and how do you get on the same page with your partner? And one of you talked about sort of this idea of like an unbucket list. So I don't know who wants to take it first, but I would love to hear from you guys about how do we put this in practice and get on the same page with our partner about saying no.
Do you want to go first, Megan?
Sure, happy to. I feel like, Diane, you had made great points about having the bucket list, which leans into, what truly is important. So I'll take my turn at being the Scrooge of looking at the unbucket list of, what are those certain parties or invites that are coming and you just really dread going to them, and just taking it off your list without hesitation, without even having said no yet, and just knowing that when it comes, you've already given yourself and your partner that, or whomever that permission that it just doesn't have to be a priority in the season. And then I would encourage people to also think about how you feel knowing that you're missing that. Like, man, you're gonna really enjoy that time maybe on the couch with your family a whole lot more, knowing that you said no and you don't feel badly about it, and that's okay. So I guess there's just so many things and it's not possible to do them all. And for people who do try to do them all, they certainly don't seem like they're really enjoying the whole holiday spirit, trying to cram 800 parties in that season or whatever that looks like. But Diane, I think you made some really great points about what to prioritize in that bucket list. So I'd let you to jump in from there.
Yeah, so I think what we were talking about is how I have 3 kids and it's my husband and I, and what we do here, or we've done for the past couple of years, is just allow everyone to say, what is one thing you want to do this holiday season, basically between Thanksgiving and Christmas? What is one thing that you want to make sure happens? And we make sure those 5 things happen. 5 things seems like a reasonable amount, and then anything that's sprinkled in is as a happy time. It's not necessary though. And I think something that I've noticed, like this is just in the last week because my week has been so incredibly chaotic. I'm going from thing to thing and I'm not even enjoying it because I'm just ready for the next thing to come. And I just don't want to get to 20 years from now when my kids are out of my household and be like, that was just all a blur and I wasn't enjoying it. I was trying to give them this idyllic childhood, but like I wasn't enjoying it with them. And was it too much for them? Would they have enjoyed a simpler, slower paced holiday season? And I mean, this is throughout their lives, it can be applied, but I think that was something that I had thought about a few years ago. And then again, kind of just comparing it to what the season is I've been in the last month. It's just something that I'm absolutely going to make sure happens this year.
Yeah. I think taking the things off your list will could lead into that really enjoying and being more present in the things that are on your list then, knowing there's nothing else hanging over your head. I think you also mentioned on our call that if there was something that was really important to your partner or kiddo, but maybe not your favorite thing to do, doing it because it like realizing how important it was to somebody else made it much more, I don't know if tolerable feels like a little aggressive, but made it something that you could find enjoyment in as well because you notice and you know how much it means to somebody else. So I think that's a really kind of a cool way to reconcile the unbucket and the bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. That compromise is so important, especially I think I was talking about my husband's work parties and it was just something that, those aren't necessarily my connections, but I want him to feel supported by me. So therefore, if that's his thing, then we're going to do that thing.
Yeah, we have a holiday party coming up. That's certainly not my thing either, but obviously it's important because my husband's like one of the leaders at his company and I want him to feel supported too, but I think the compromise is obviously really important. So what are some things like Megan with Tula? Can you just share a little bit about like the services that you guys provide? And you have a chance to do like a shameless plug, but I think it's really important that people understand how you help people. And then what are some things that you see over and over and again with people once you're able to provide them help where they're just like, oh, like they feel like they can breathe again? Like, can you just give us like a little, like some examples of how your business and startup helps people?
Sure. I'll kind of start with like how we defined our scope of services, which is really pretty broad, but when we sat down to kind of figure out how we could make Tula be the most helpful and impactful, app and community and service, it was looking at our own list, our own kind of second shift responsibilities and putting those down. So that's the meal planning and prep, it's the grocery shopping, it's errands, it's scheduling appointments, it is organizing the closet, the pantries, all those things that just really stink and sit at the bottom of the list for a very long time. Dropping off returns, Goodwill, that was a really selfish one for me. I mean, I feel like I've driven returns and Goodwill around for months at a time. So it's been funny, like when we started and put our list out there and then started seeing other requests come in and seeing like a lot of alignment and then seeing some maybe more surprising things that we wouldn't have thought of as being, a priority for somebody else. So we try to just leave our the requests really open and try to say yes to as much as we can. So because if somebody's taking the time to ask, which we know can be hard to do, to ask for help is hard, to admit that you don't really want to do something or that you don't have the time to do it, especially for moms, I think it's really hard. There's a lot of that extra mom guilt and pressure and comparing. So we try to say yes to everything that we possibly can. The only thing we do say no to is childcare. But we certainly love to help people find childcare and make their lives more simplified in that fashion. But so we built out an app. It's really simple. We want to make it really empowering and easy. So it's not like weighing on people to, if they should ask for help, we're kind of weighing the value of it. So people submit their to-do list to us. And then we have a community of amazing, trusted, and vetted assistants and chefs, and we push those requests out to them kind of like in an Uber fashion, so they can see the requests come up. If it fits into their skill set, their timeline, they can claim them, and then essentially that's sort of the matchmaking, and they take over and take care of those to-dos, cross them off for our clients, which is really, it feels like we get to cross off everybody's list in some ways. So that's really satisfying for somebody who's type A and loves to do that. But yeah, it's been a really cool experience. And kind of the whole ecosystem, a lot of our assistants, most of them are moms. And so it's a great fit for them because they can do it after drop off and before pickup and not have that, stress of trying to juggle career and timelines and expectations in an office, as well as all those that we already have at home. So that's been also a really rewarding part of what we're building and the why as well. But I would say the majority of requests that we see are the meal planning and prep, home organization, errands, and then a lot of research, whether that's, for party planning or trips or vendors looking for handymen, that sort of thing. So just the things that are, sometimes maybe a little bit easier to take off of people's lists or for people to ask for help in. Those are the themes that we see cropping up a lot.
Diane, when people ask you, I imagine you get a lot of questions after podcast episodes or maybe even feedback after you publish your book, but is there like a theme that you notice people or moms having a hard time sort of like grasping, or I don't know really how I'm trying to articulate this question, but is there like one overarching thing that you see people really struggle like putting into practice? Anything specific?
I think there's probably a couple of things. I think one is just how do we get our spouses on board or our family members on board in general? And that can be really hard. And sometimes they might never follow along, but I think that the joy of minimalism or just kind of paring down what you own is you can do that for yourself because you are in control of the things that you personally own. Something that I've done in our home is to have conversations with my husband to say, this is your space. You can do with it whatever you want to, as I have my own spaces. And then the community spaces where we're all existing, let's have some more compromises in those zones and let's try and make them just a bit tidier, just not as cluttered, just because we're all regularly existing in these spaces and we don't want to make more work for ourselves than have to be. So I think just kind of allowing people their autonomy to have their spaces be their spaces has been helpful. And then hopefully people will follow suit and follow along once they see the benefit of living with us. But then the other thing was, and my friend Tracy, I'm doing this decluttering challenge with her this month, but she has great advice that I'm stealing from her. And she talks about systems. Like once we implement systems in our homes, if I go through and fix up my kitchen or organize my kitchen and declutter things and move things around, it goes back to chaos because maybe it wasn't efficient for the whole family. Maybe the systems that you're putting into place don't work for everyone. And so it does become cluttered and chaotic again. So I think that when you are in a household, and this is easier said than done, I understand, especially with little kids, but if you can set up your household so that everyone can kind of come along and together and know the way that the snack cupboard looks, or give kids one drawer and just allow it to be their drawer, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but then that little system or station in the house, we kind of know what to expect there. And again, then contain what you can. But I would say that those are probably the two biggest things, or how can I get the people in my household on board, and then also allowing those systems to maintain themselves and not fall back into chaos.
Okay, well, this question that just came in is perfect for you, Diane. Sorry to put you on the spot. Can you talk about toys?
Where are the questions? I can't even see the question.
I don't think you can see them since I'm the host.
Okay, gotcha.
Can you talk about toys and minimalism? I feel lost.
Yeah, toys and minimalism. Well, I guess I should say this is something that is currently on my mind because this isn't current. I haven't put this out there totally to the public yet, but we actually just moved. And so I'm in our new house now. Yeah, we moved over the past few days. That's why it's been really chaotic this past month, just figuring out if we were going to move or not. But all that to say, as we were getting our house together, I told my husband, I thought we had few toys. I thought that we were minimalist. How do we have all these toys? Somehow they keep making their way back in. But one of the biggest things I would say in regards to toys, like I said, those community spaces, if we can keep those, again, they're not going to always be toy free, but if we can kind of keep the, again, chaos is the only word I know how to use right now. If we can keep that to the children's rooms, let's just try that first. And then when it comes to the toys in bedrooms, I'm a big believer in visual boundaries. So my kids have a few spaces in their rooms where they can put their toys on display or bins for their toys. And then once those are filled up, it's kind of like the one in, one out rule. So we're getting closer to Christmas. Probably in November, I'm going to go through their toys with them and say, hey, you haven't really been playing with this. Are you ready to let go of it? And everyone has different opinions. If they're not ready, it might be like, well, let's get it out of your room for right now. It's going to be in the basement. If you want it again, we'll bring it back up. But right now, let's just have space for Christmas. And that's kind of exciting to prepare yourself for that, the anticipation. But again, it doesn't completely go out of the house. It's just in this limbo area. And to me, for my little ones, if they don't ask for it again in the next month, I just get rid of it. I may ask my daughter, who's almost 9, her opinion. Oh, here comes my 4-year-old now. But that would be the visual boundaries, and then having that limbo of an area is highly recommended. Now I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Okay, Megan, then I'm gonna hand it over to you. Back to the sort of power of saying no. Someone submitted a question that says, I'm pregnant and I don't really want to see my husband's family over the holidays. It's a lot of people and it feels like a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Any
That's so hard when it's actually family. It's so much easier, I feel like, to say no to friends because, you know, if you say no and they're upset, maybe they weren't really your friend, but you're kind of stuck with your in-laws. So I just think that honestly, something that I'm trying harder to do is just to say no without a huge justification. But because that's obviously family, I can't imagine a family that would fault somebody for saying it just feels like a lot when I'm pregnant and I'm already kind of overwhelmed with a lot of change, a lot of everything. Like, I feel like that could be a really, really fair thing to just be super transparent about. And then their reaction, if it were to be negative, like that's really about them and not so much about you. That feels like a very fair boundary in my opinion. Or maybe there's a way, you know, to plan that there are a couple of things like within an hour window or meeting for a walk or something like that, that feels like you still sort of check the box of having that connection, but without having it to be with 50 people at once, because that's overwhelming, pregnant or not, but definitely add in all of the other things that are going on. I completely empathize with that, but I feel like you have the best pass in the entire world to just be really honest about it.
Yeah. Diane shaking her head. Yes. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Been there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know where my son went. He must not need me anymore. So
one of the things you said right before you answered that question, and by the way, we have about 15 minutes left. So for anyone that's on the line, you guys are welcome to submit any question. We don't really reserve the last 15 minutes for Q&A. We just like to answer them organically as they come in. So if there's anything you guys are like really would love advice on, we have 2 incredibly smart women who talk about these topics for their career. So please don't hesitate to put them in the question. One of the things, Megan, you said earlier while answering that question about her and her in-laws was, if it's a no, it's a no, and you've been trying not to justify your no. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. And that is like, I'm 44. I feel like I've been struggling with that since I could talk, of feeling like I have to explain why things are a no, which generally just kind of feels worse in the long run of, you know, feeling like I myself have to weight whether it's important or not. And then that must make the people on the receiving end feel like, well, it was really a decision about importance. And sometimes it's not about importance, it's about time. It's about having space or self-care of just taking some time for yourself too. So, and I also have noticed, like, when I get a no from somebody, I'm not mad about that. I understand completely. So, and I don't expect a long explanation. So like, why is that pressure that I've put on myself all this time that I need to give somebody an answer or a reason that they will hopefully accept? So I think it's just kind of like looking at it a couple of lenses, like, what do you expect from people as a no? When you're okay with a no, you don't require anything else. Don't put that extra burden on yourself to require it. Where people give me a no with a huge long explanation, I kind of feel like sometimes that just feels like, man, they had to think of everything to not hang out or to not do this thing. Yeah. I would have rather just like heard, that doesn't work this week. Sorry, that's enough. That's totally fine, because it doesn't, and it doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything to add to that, Diane, just about like not having to justify reasons why we don't want to do something?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think that we feel like we have to explain, because especially for people pleasers, or we just don't want to let people down, or maybe we really want to do it, and so we're trying to over communicate that. But I think, Megan, you're right. Sometimes when people are just over explaining, it's kind of like, oh, or you have to kind of try harder. I don't know. I think that we should just feel comfortable in saying no. Thanks for the invite. Be gracious about it. Keep inviting me. Sometimes I'll say that, please keep inviting me. I would love to do it next time. It just is not going to work out right now. So I think that's important, especially for someone that might be introverted, to just remind, like, hey, I still like the invite. I can't, but like, it feels good to be invited to something. So yeah.
I think one of the areas that I really struggle in right now, especially, is really truly wanting to go. So I say yes when I'm invited, and then it gets closer and closer to actually like executing on that invitation. And then I'm like, I'm sort of like paralyzed with anxiety about canceling. And Megan, to your point, like having to justify and explain why I can no longer make it. I really want to be better about just in the moment when I receive that invite, sitting down with my husband and being like, is this a resounding yes? And if it's not, then it's probably a no. But just being more firm in what works for us in the beginning, because now I'm like stressed out, and there's literally this thing I need to cancel that I've said yes to for next Thursday, and now we're less than a week away and I still haven't, because I'm struggling with letting someone down even though I know she's not going to care. Like it's so silly how we get in these like cycles. So hard. And I don't think my husband thinks about those things.
Yeah.
No, I think my husband and I have different approaches on that as well. But and then for me, like I get to that point and then I keep thinking about it, which now I've spent time that I already said I didn't have to go to the thing, but like thinking about it all of this time and cancel the day before and look like, you know, really kind of a jerk. So yeah, I like if it's not like a heck yes, it's probably just a no thank you, and that's okay.
Right. And that's enough.
Yeah.
That was a chapter in the book. It was called Say Heck Yes. And again, you're not going to say heck yes to the dentist, but you just have to go do some of those things. And I also say for me, I feel the same way, Sarah. I feel like sometimes I'll have that looming into like anxiety, whatever it is, if I don't really want to do this. And more often than not, it always is a great time. So I just feel like I live in the low expectations. Like this is just going to be okay. And then I'm always pleasantly surprised. So maybe we just need to lower expectations. But also, I think it was Tim Ferriss that said this. He will not say yes to anything on the phone via text or on a phone call. He will only say yes in person. And also he takes time to say, let me check my schedule. But he's like, if people are persistent and like need an answer, it's an automatic no, because you should just give me the freedom to, that probably applies more to like business opportunities maybe, but yeah. I thought that was nice.
I still like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So people are going to be taking their kids to all the pumpkin patches. They've got all the cute outfits for Halloween. Their house is decorated. Their mantle's got bats and pumpkins. They're doing all the things for the holiday season. Any suggestions on how people can sort of just like protect their own mental state during this time? Like anything you'd want to share?
I feel like oh, sorry. I feel like social media is so hard this time of year, right? Because everyone is posting all their perfectly curated matching outfits and the posed, not posed pictures, and nothing wrong with that. That's completely fine. But it does create a lot of pressure maybe for people who don't have the time or that's just not that important to them, and that's okay. So I think social media right now is for the next couple of months is just tricky. So maybe looking at it from, if you don't know what other people are doing, you're not comparing or holding yourself to a standard that you don't need to anyway. One thing that has been funny is that I do feel like this is something that is stressful for a lot of people, especially women, and that is a request that we get for people for our team to come and like decorate, you know, their mantle or their front porch. So I kind of, I'm not like laugh about it because it makes perfect sense and I've had people do it for me too, but it is something that we still feel like we need to do. It's a should, it's a need, it's all of these things. But if it's truly not making you happy, it is also easy to hand off. And maybe we should kind of look at why that is and if we still feel the need to do it. But yeah, this is a tough season that we're entering for sure.
Yeah. And also I've been talking a lot about this. I had an episode discussing this whole thing. We never really arrived to a conclusion, but it's the idea of insight into others' lives that we never had prior to social media days. And you never knew what someone's house looked like unless you were in relationship, like direct relationship with them and were over at their house. And I think that you're right. It does play into this comparison trap that we fall into. But also I would say if you wouldn't do it, like if you wouldn't do it outside of Instagram. So if you, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this. People do things specifically to post to the gram and they want to share their pretty houses. But if that didn't exist, would you still do it? If you couldn't share it, would you still do it? And I think that's a great also rule to live by in general with everything that we do. if you couldn't share this with anyone else, would you say yes to it?
I
Where
love it. I feel like there should
Yeah.
be like a life motto somewhere like on everyone's desk or in their kitchen.
Yeah. So I think that that's something. Oh, Pierce.
Would you still do it?
Yeah.
And the answer for me is often no, and so I just don't. And I'm gonna take a picture and I'll post it to Minimalist Moms later. But I have one little skeleton hanging from my door, and that's the majority of our Halloween decorations. I don't even have pumpkins yet. You want to say hi?
Mommy, I want
All right, we can put me back on mute.
I want Sour Patch Kids.
Okay.
Awesome. I love that so much. If you couldn't share it, would you still do it? Okay, I'm gonna like literally ingrain that in everything. Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. This isn't necessarily a question, but I just am gonna share what someone wrote. I actually feel like the times I am most stressed out are weekends when we have no plans and I'm responsible for entertaining my kids at home, especially in the winter. It makes me so anxious for some reason. So I feel similarly. We had a webinar a couple months ago on how to play with a newborn. And so for those people who are on the line with that are expecting their first baby, I'm not sure when your due dates are or any of those that have young babies at home. She is the director of Play at Love Every, and the thing that she said on the call was babies don't get bored. And I wish someone would have told me that when both my kids were in that stage, that I wouldn't have felt so much pressure to like entertain them with the black and white cards or anything. Like I think I would have just put a blanket outside on the grass more than I had and just let them lay there. And I love that she had shared that. She said babies don't get bored. So for those on the call with young babies, I just want to share that. So maybe that takes a little less pressure off and you can go listen to that webinar. It was amazing. So is there anything you guys would say to this person? She feels responsible for entertaining her kids at home when they don't have plans, and it is anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I wonder if there's some generational stuff in there, right? Like my mom's lovely and I love her so much, but I don't think she worried about us being entertained every second. And yet my sisters and I, maybe we would say out loud that we were bored, but it didn't take long to figure out something to do, kind of to put ourselves in motion. And that wasn't because my mom didn't care or she wasn't, wanting to be engaged or around us, but I think there's something to kind of taking accountability as not only the parents, but as the kids to figure it out. And then they'll start to have that reality of, I don't have to be doing something every time. I don't have to be scheduled all the time. And maybe that sort of is like a little bit of a good cycle for both parents and kids to get into when you're just okay with that. Obviously that's easier said than done, but yeah, I think there's something interesting to explore there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like my mom was the same way. And actually, I'm having a little bit of that today because usually on Fridays we do some type of excursion because I homeschool and my son is off school on Fridays. So we have nothing planned today because I knew I have this like kind of midday, not midday, but you know what I mean, mid-morning. And it is hard. It's like, how do I not entertain them? Are they going to destroy the house, which causes me more work, which causes me more stress? But also they have found things to do all morning and it's been fine, but it's just that apprehension of how's this going to go? We've had a few blips, but I think allowing them to be independent, and you're right, Megan, to get bored. They need to get bored. It's where creativity grows. So I think allowing them to do that, and yeah, they don't have to be dependent on us 24/7 because our goal as parents is to get them to be self-efficient adults when they turn 18, to leave the nest, to leave the coop. And so it starts, I don't want to say it starts at 4, but my son has been playing all morning and he's just fine.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. I'm going to ask you guys to just leave us some parting words. If there's like one thing you want people to take away from this session, what is it? Megan, I'll start with you.
I would say the biggest thing is just to give yourself grace. There's no right answer in any of this. Comparing is challenging. There's not enough hours in the day, and that we all just need to kind of give ourselves that grace to not feel like we have to do it all or be perfect in any way, shape, or form. It's not possible. It's unrealistic. So yeah, I think being gentle with yourself is very important, especially entering the holidays.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that's great advice, Megan. And also I'm really big into this idea of just kind of like staying in your own lane and staying on the path and values that you guys have for your family, and just really putting the blinders on to outside noise and, again, the things that we feel like we should do. I'm sure that someone that is really professional would be like, oh my gosh, Diane, I can't believe someone just interrupted, your child just interrupted your webinar. But you know what? This is the season of life I'm in. I want to keep saying yes to these opportunities. And so this is just where I'm at right now. And I don't want to say I don't care, because I do care. I want to represent myself well, but also, I don't know, if I just put the blinders on and say, like, I'm going to try and do these things, this is the best I can get or do, then that should be enough. And if I don't receive the opportunities, then maybe it wasn't meant to be. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And your 4-year-old can join any meeting you and I ever have, ever.
He knows we have Sour Patch Kids.
If you walked in the front door, she would be banging on this glass door, like literally trying to break it down. So it's all good. That's
I
life.
enjoy calls and meetings much more when children interrupt them, to be honest with you.
It is, yeah, it is kind of fun, isn't it? Yes.
Well, thank you both so much for your time. We will send post-webinar recap in a couple hours with a link to the recording for anyone that wasn't able to join that had registered. And I'm just so grateful for both of you to share your time and insights with us. And hopefully people will leave more empowered to say no and really prioritize their guesses. So thank you guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Have a great weekend.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.